Tonight we're going to spend a few fascinating minutes talking about that elusive goddess, truth. And when I read the book we're going to talk about, I was reminded of Voltaire's quote, which I'll paraphrase it, but it's to the effect that to the living one owes consideration, to the dead only the truth. The book is called The Search for J.F.K. It has been written by two eminently qualified authors who happen to live in Key Biscayne, and maybe some of your neighbors, Clay and Joan Blair. Welcome to Montage.
Great to be here.
What do you mean, The Search for J.F.K.? What are you trying to do with this book?
Well, shall I answer?
Please.
Okay. During Watergate, when many new things became apparent to us on the Washington scene, the political scene, we wondered about Jack Kennedy and how had he been falsified to us. Was he a con job, or was
Right.
Jack really Jack as he projected himself, or was there another Jack Kennedy? And we set out without any real bias in mind, or any bias, or any other objective in mind, really, than just to find out if this could be done at this early date, to find the real character of Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy's, the years that we deal with, from his age 18 to about 30, most of what we know, what had been given to us as fact of those years, was not true.
Right.
It turned out to be not true. Either not true or distorted slightly or distorted largely.
Some examples.
Well, his war record,
Yeah.
as a prime example, PT 109 and his service in the Pacific has been presented as a glorious, heroic chapter in the life of John Kennedy. It was not. In fact, it was exact opposite. The loss of his PT boat was considered a scandal. The events preceding the loss was considered inept by his own commanding officer, as we discovered in numerous interviews. The whole thing was a disaster. But his father, through shrewd public relations and his own innate sort of promotive skill, actually turned this thing around and made Jack a hero out of it.
Clay, now, was Joe Kennedy at that time, this is during the war, was he thinking of Jack Kennedy one day becoming president?
He very definitely was thinking of his older son, Joe Jr., as president. And Jack was to be not a politician, but a writer, a professor of history. However, just about the time that we're talking about here, Joe was killed in England in an airplane crash, and Jack then became the one to carry on this sort of fanatical desire of the father to have someone in the White House. So it became very necessary that this war record thing, which he had already started to turn around, be definitely turned around, and was done.
Was he really a bad man, a terrible person?
No, I don't think
Why
so.
did we
Do you?
need this great fiction surrounding him?
Well, yeah, go you answer.
I was just going to say, I think it's, they had to, I think his father and his press agents built him up to be a little larger than life size. They did have to cover up. They had to be careful that the public didn't know about his health, his bad health. But other than that, they had to build him up to make him larger than life size, just, you know, so he'd be more special than anybody else.
Jack's image, the image portrayed or projected to us, was one of a very vigorous, athletic young man who would love to pick up and play touch football, and was a big hero from the war, in PT boats, and played football at Harvard. All of these things are true partially. In truth, Jack Kennedy's health was miserable. From the time he was born until the day he died, he lived in almost constant misery from a back He was born with a back that was disabled, and throughout his life constantly went downhill. And he almost died from a couple of back operations. He had Addison's disease, which until 1949, in the development of cortisone, would have been fatal. Jack Kennedy would have died by the age of, say, 32 or 33. The question of Jack's Addison's disease, which was under control with cortisone and really wasn't a thing that should deny him from the White House, was raised, and they lied about it because they were afraid it would kill him, that the Addison disease things had such a terrible connotation about it. They lied. They just lied.
Let's talk a minute now about the sexual side of Jack Kennedy, which, of course, is in the news these days. Did you discover any abnormal behavior of Jack Kennedy towards women, or is it what you would say is a normal male chasing attitude towards women with his behavior with females?
Why don't we give that to the
to the female?
The females, see how.
Well, I don't think it was necessarily abnormal. In fact, in these early years, quite a few of the women that we talked to who had gone out with him kept insisting he was very shy and seemed unsure of himself. And some of his very closest male friends one of them in particular, talked about that Jack had a sense of trying to test himself. He was always trying to make sure to see whether he had it or not, whether he could come on and just, attract somebody, anybody. I mean, he felt that he had to, but it was more of seemed to me it was more of a unsure of himself. It was testing his power to attract people.
How do you both, excuse me, but how do you both feel about that as it relates to the presidency? Judith Exner now is talking about going to the White House and so forth. What's your personal feeling? Do you think that's bad?
I feel personally that yes, in Jack's case, it is important. Now, I don't think the Exner thing per se is important unless it is revealed that she was a go-between between, say, some mafioso elements and whatever. I'm sure that's not going to be the case, but I think we were told quite authoritatively that at one time Jack was carrying on 17 concurrent affairs while he was in the White House. This seems to me, if true, to be not only exhausting and time-consuming, but
Yes.
reckless
That's right.
of the office and so on, sort of an arrogance that I'd like to know more about.
I'm bothered as a journalist that the American people live on these false images. Now, maybe they should be. Maybe they don't need to know the truth. What do you? Obviously, you don't agree with that. Why?
Sometimes, Joe, sometimes I think they get what they deserve. I don't mean to be patronizing, but at times I'm really appalled at what the American people accept as truth, or even this sort of drive, this need to have this heroic Placid, their saint,
Right.
as a leader, with no questions asked, and attribute to him, things that are beyond.
I heard, excuse me, but I heard Murray Griffin say something very, very profound. He said, we expect our leaders to have done nothing, been nowhere, done anything. In other words, have done all the things that all of us do as a part of being a human today. But we expect people that we want to be president have never done anything. And that's not normal.
No, it isn't
And we,
normal.
of course, know that no one lives that way. But why do we keep up this false image?
This I think is because of need, to have someone larger than life to transpose your own problems and put them in in a symbolic sense, just dump them off on this guy and let him take care of them in that old heroic sense. I don't know, I think it also, the origin of all this is very certainly got to be in our schooling system. And I don't think that in the lower grades that history particularly contemporary history, is taught with enough reality. It's time we all looked at our leaders, I think, with a new sense of reality, starting in the grade schools.
But absolutely, Clay, but what concerns me today is I want to know about Jimmy Carter today
I do
before I
too.
vote for him for
Right.
presidency, and Gerald Ford, and Ronald Reagan, and Jerry Brown, and whoever's running.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter who.
Right.
And I'm still not sure that I'm getting that, and as a journalist, I'm bothered by it, and all I can say is we're out of time, but I commend the search of JFK to you as an exercise in the search for honesty. It's a fascinating book. It details conversations with people, and it details, I think, the search we all might embark on to ask people what the truth is, try and discern for ourselves, and I think no higher accolade can be given to authors than you'd search for the truth and reported what you found, and let the chips fall where they may.
Thank you.
Clay and Joan Blair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll be right back.